Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddler Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as Mr. Most Days Off, and today we get into one of my favorite times of the year when it comes to The Simpsons. We're talking Treehouse of Horror. We're talking two different episodes of Treehouse of Horror because we've got a great guest joining us today. But before we get to her, introducing to you, as always, your co-host with the most, Richie the Whiz Kid.
Man, this is one of those first Treehouses where, like, I was struggling to remember the last time I'd actually seen it, or if I even had seen it, because we're already into season 11 now. So I'm really excited to start seeing more and more as season 11 goes on. How many episodes I haven't seen in a while, but nobody cares what I have to say today. We want to get to our guest 7780 down there. Let me go ahead and throw it back to Miles. The man, the myth, the cutest little officer in Springfield. It's Mr. Most Days Off.
Hey, we can hear you, Chief. And don't be ridiculous. Nobody cares what we have to say any week. It's not just because we have a guest. But we do have a great guest joining us here today. I'm very excited. You may know her from the book she's written, including a choose-your-own-adventure novel written about her sister being late for everything. As well as the book Basic Algebra for Basic Bitches, 100 Things the Simpsons fans should know and do before they die. And she just so happened to write the most recent Treehouse of Horror episode, Treehouse of Horror 31. Welcome to the show today, Julia Prescott. How are you today, Julia?
I'm great. Man, you looked at my website, huh?
I found you online. It turns out if you type Julia Prescott, a whole bunch of stuff about you just comes up.
Damn, cool. I got to do that. The last time I checked my name on Google, it was like two people that were doing better than me. So I think I immediately, and one was a doctor and one's a gymnast.
You surpassed those.
No serial killers yet. Yeah. But I snapped my laptop shut and I was like, no more. Yeah, I'm doing all right. I am glad that you got those books in too, because I'm very proud of them. My sister continues to be my muse. And, you know, people may say who don't know her or our relationship that it is the shadiest thing in the world that I wrote a choose your own adventure about her being late to everything. And if you read it, spoiler, she doesn't make it on time.
Hey, no matter what decision I make, she doesn't get there.
Absolutely. I'm sure we all have these people in our lives, but my sister is just perennially the person who's like, I'm 5 minutes out, and then like an hour passes and you're like, bitch, are you okay? Like, you know,
I think I'm that bitch in this situation.
No, I can tell. Not I mean, just
no
you're Mr. Most Days Off.
Yeah,
naturally.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not to whatever. If a true crime happens in our lives, there's never going to be a point where I go, well, she was, you know, late, and that's so unlike her. So we instantly did a search party, like, you know.
Why did you report her missing for like 3 days? That's just usually how long it takes.
Pre-COVID, I mean, before we knew how bad it was, and, you know, now we know how bad it was going to be. But pre-COVID, my sister was, you know, going to Vegas all the time, you know, just partying it up. Like, she's going through an Ariana Grande phase right now, in her 30s. And I joked that she was going to be patient zero just because she's out there in the world enjoying her life, which we all should be. But anyway.
She's not sharing, was it donuts or ice cream with Ariana Grande? I can't remember which one she licked.
Oh, yeah, when she licked the donut. It was
donut, yeah. It was a lady in Texas that licked the Bluebell ice cream and then put it back on the shelf.
Right.
And people were just mad that they took Bluebell off the shelf. They're like, whatever, she's fine. We just want our ice cream back.
They were literally like, we'll take that chance.
Yeah, well, I should specify, like, the Ariana Grande phase that my sister's going through, I think has a name. I think it's called, like, Slut Wave or Slutcore. Yeah, never in my life. Welcome to the podcast, Slut Wave and Slutcore.
I love it. You just happened to lean in. You showed us before the podcast started, before we hit record, but show off your dummy
yes.
Actually,
my sister gave them to me because we share a love of The Simpsons, but These are Gummy Venus and Milo earrings that she got me for Christmas this year that I think she got off Etsy. And if I knew the name of the artist, I would say them now. I also have a Gummy Venus tattoo on my shoulder. So
Cool.
Which I've had for 5 years. I don't know.
I love it.
It was basically what bonded me to Allie Gertz, and then we started our podcast from there. But yeah, I have the Gummy Venus because I felt like it was subtle enough, but also like obvious enough that a casual Simpsons viewer would be like, oh yeah. And yeah, I got it years ago. I'm a comedy writer and had this moment of realizing, the reason why I write comedy is because of The Simpsons. And that was 5 years ago, before I even knew that writing on the show would be a possibility. So yeah.
So I really want to talk about your time writing on the show, of course, how you got there on that journey. But what we really like to do, and you mentioned it, I should have earlier, you and Allie Gertz do the Round Springfield podcast, which is a fantastic Simpsons podcast. I almost said Springfield podcast. I guess it's both.
It's the same.
But before all of that, what we really like to go do on this show is go back in time, and let's go back to when Julia first discovered The Simpsons. Like, where were you in life? Like, how was it receptive, all of that good stuff?
Yeah, so I'm in my early 30s, and so I never really knew a world without The Simpsons. I was born around the time that The Simpsons were born, and I talk about this a lot on our podcast, but my parents got divorced when I was 4. And to also give a little bit more background of my parents, they both came here. They both came to LA to make it. My mom was an actress and a seamstress, and my dad was a stand-up comedian. And then he had a career as a warm-up comic. His biggest claim to fame is that he was the warm-up comic for the Bob Newhart show. I never got to see him perform.
Fame, honestly.
It goes deeper. I mean, there's a lot of Hollywood stories, and him doing stand-up with people who, I then did stand up in college and did that for 10 years before COVID hit, retired right on time, or semi-retired. But yeah, there's a lot of stories there, but basically they both came here to make it, and then they got divorced. But, I had the benefit of growing up with a stand-up dad. And, he kind of unofficially created this almost comedy college for my sister and I. We'd go over to his place on the weekends. He had an apartment. And so he would just show us, Albert Brooks movies, and he would show us Don Knotts movies. And he would really educate us in a way that definitely formed my sense of humor. But among that was he would very illegally. By the way, all of the tapes I think that he showed us were illegally taped from other official copies. So whoops. But he would form basically what are VHS mixtapes of different episodes of The Simpsons. And I remember he made one for the first 2 seasons, and I just wore it out, partially because I missed my dad when I wasn't with him during the week, but also because it was the best. And it just felt like everything about it was so aspirational in its humor, and it just felt so comforting because, I also come from the generation of being raised by cable, being a latchkey kid as well. So, the kind of shows that I want to create now are ones where the characters feel like my friends, and the world feels like a world I want to inhabit. And that's definitely true of The Simpsons. So that was really my first introduction to it, of those first 2 seasons. And then watching the show every Sunday growing up, that was a bonding experience with my family, and definitely a little bit more with my dad than my mom, though my mom did watch as well. And then my sister and I growing up, we only had each other. So, I'm sure this is true of you guys and your siblings, but we have the Simpsons secret language of, just whatever little weird lines are injected into our everyday lexicon. And, we have 20-year span of us. She's an artist, by the way. So that's great, because she'll make me Simpsons gifts all the time, and then I'll try and cobble together my own Simpsons gifts for her. But we basically have been doing that for 20 plus years of just here you go. One year my sister gave me an illustration she made of I hate it when the waffles stick together. Sticking together is what good waffles do. And so that's one of the lines that we say to each other all the time. And I should toot my own horn a little bit when it comes to artistic ability. I'm definitely more of a writer, but I did, for a time, I would make like needlepoint stuff like every twee bitch of my generation did for a couple summers. And I made her, like, I don't even know where I found the original thing. It must have been at like Michael's or Joann's Fabrics or something, but it was like this little oval sort of platelet. And I like painted Millhouse, and then I wrote Dia de los Millhouse. Day of the Dead were also part Mexican, so that was sort of, I guess, a nod to our Hispanic heritage. But yeah, what can I say? That's basically my introduction to The Simpsons, and
that's a really good introduction to The Simpsons.
Teuton.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things you mentioned. One, actually, you're talking about like the secret language. Richie and I are actually both only children, but we kind of found that was like almost like code you could throw out to like identify other people. That's like, oh, you get it. We're, you know, we watched that together. So similar in that. But something that you said that really jumped out to me is you talked about the shows that you create. You're trying to put like your friends and your experiences on screen, essentially.
Yeah.
And that so much reminds me of one of my inspirations, Kevin Smith, who talked about when he created Clerks, he didn't see his friends represented on screen. So he wrote a script in which they existed. And now, I mean, fan or not, he's one of the, you know, he's done all right with his writing, we'll say. So I think that's
I think
really
he's really
cool.
Smart and good. That's my opinion.
Two words I would also use to describe him for sure. But yeah, no, I think that's really really cool that you're taking that. It's like The Simpsons molds comedians today in some way, or just puts an imprint on you specifically or anybody who's writing, and we find that a lot with like a common thread amongst people. That's always like, even if you don't actively watch The Simpsons, it's like I watched The Simpsons when I was younger, and it like impacted my sense of humor, type of thing.
Yeah. I would say that if I had to like draw a pie chart of like what percentage is directly like my influences, and you know what could be felt when you read, you know, a draft that I write today, it's like 80% Simpsons. But then there's another sliver that I would say is Kids in the Hall, which I consider the best sketch group of all time. And then another sliver that is Strangers with Candy, which is a show that should not have existed. But it is like so great and so dark. I've just started rewatching it. And probably another sliver, if we're talking about, you know, trying to write characters that are representative of people in our own lives that didn't previously have the representation. I just rewatched Seinfeld from the beginning, and now I'm looking for meaning in my life because it was such a great way to end every day. But that I feel like is another influence. And then probably Wayne's World. So that's sort of like
party time. Excellent.
But then Wayne's World, you know, that's also when you go into that world of like 90s SNL, that's kind of the same landscape as The Simpsons, but obviously The Simpsons is the most within that. And it was a really big treat to like dive deeper into The Simpsons as a fan in college and then post-college. And then you like rewatch the episodes and you start to learn, oh, this is a John Swartzwelder joke, or, oh, this is a Oakley Weinstein joke, or, you know, getting to know the writers in that way really influenced me as a writer too.
So obviously you come from a household that supported The Simpsons, which we find you either come from like that type of household, or The Simpsons is the devil and you're not allowed to watch it. You obviously came from the former on that one. Where did you first start to express yourself creatively? Was it stand-up or was it writing that came first? Like, where did you start taking it from laughing at the screen to producing the laughs yourself?
All right. So I'm a huge Lisa Simpson kind of gal, for better or worse. But there's a part of me now, you know, I'm fortunately 10 years into, or 10 plus years into a professional writing career. And I wish there's part of me, I wish that I had other interests, but I always was a writer. And even when I was a little kid, you know, I was like writing short stories and submitting them to American Girl magazine. There was a call to submit. It wasn't just me being a weirdo, but none of them got in, so it doesn't matter. But I was always like trying to do something. And I think you know, bonding with my dad over humor and seeing through his life example of the value of humor, because that really was like the goal of, you know, the weekends going over to my dad's place. It was like, you know, he was showing us stuff that was funny, and we were howling laughing over these silly bits that we were forming as a group of me, my sister, and my dad. And you know, he didn't specifically say this, but it was just like, you know, humor is valuable. And this is like so precocious. It's so obnoxious. I'm sorry. But I remember I have this vivid memory of like maybe being in kindergarten, I think, and sitting in like a corner of the classroom by myself among like toys and blocks and whatever, turning to those blocks and toys and going, how can I make this funny? How can I make my class laugh? I had that planted in me. Now, the way that it connects to being a Lisa Simpson is that like, it was always like the ambition of like, I have to make everyone laugh, therefore everything is going to be better, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it just was always tied to this sort of ambitious manic goal. But I had that very early. I put off, you know, so I had that as like a, you know, a kernel of like, this is what I want to do with the world. But I also was like, you know, I looked up to comedy heroes so much and didn't think that I could, you know, personally live up to the standard. So there was a period of time, you know, I would say like probably high school into college, early college, where I was like, but do I want to be a comedy writer? Because I don't know if I can hack it. Like, I have the interest in it, but is there something else? And there actually was a period of time in my early college years where I was like, it's too scary being a comedy writer. I think I should be a development exec, because like every young woman's dream, like everyone dreams of. But I, you know, I was always very like, trying to, I don't know, I was very realistic. I think growing up in Los Angeles, in like what I call working class Hollywood in the Valley, seeing the dream of coming to Hollywood, and specifically through my parents, like their dreams were pivoted because it just didn't hit. So to like grow up and see, you know, two people who are talented go, all right, hang up my dream here and then do something else, was really hard for me to go, well, what right do I have to attempt this as well? So there was a time where I was like, maybe I'll be a development exec, because I know that my taste is really sharp and I have, you know, like a knowledge of the history of comedy and the history of TV and movies and whatever. But then I fortunately had a mentor in, I believe, an internship I had in college, who was like, listen, this is the only way you're going to be happy, and you're talented at it, and so you need to shut up. So thank God for that person, because otherwise I probably would be, I don't know, at Quibi. R.I.P. Looking for that.
It's fascinating. So obviously it ends up pretty well. Spoiler alert, we know that you did do all right with the writing career. So I'm glad that you had that friend that pushed you in that direction. That's fantastic. What I'd really like to talk about, though, is you obviously, the ending point of this, I think, is writing for The Simpsons. I mean, I think that that's mind blowing to me just to think about. To me, there'd be a part of me that I'd just be like, "Am I done now? Like, did I?"
Like, people have told me that, and I'm like, "Shut up! I'm not done. I'm truly just getting started. I am a spring chicken."
No, I think that is something, though, that I think as humans we do that a lot of times. We put so much, like, I would think that
right.
like that goal of being a Simpsons writer and having that, you know, title for the rest of your life. But now that you've accomplished that, that just becomes a stepping stone for whatever you're going to do next. That I'm sure will be great. I want to talk what you're going to do next, but now let's get into the meat of, tell me the day, like what happened, like how did The Simpsons happen?
Yeah, I'll try and give the most Cliff's Notes description possible. So as I mentioned, I've currently, as of this recording, 10 plus years. Is hard to track what the anniversary is, but I got very lucky. I went to Chapman University for undergrad, and then during that time I interned a lot and this is like in the second half of my college career where I was like, bitch, you're a writer. And so I started doing stand-up, and I started writing sketches. I got really involved with Channel 101, if you know it. It was created by Dan Harmon and Rob Schraub like 20 plus years ago. And just started like fucking around with all these different, areas of writing comedy. Interned at Comedy Central, interned at FX, both in development, which taught me so much just because I was able to read all the scripts that they were greenlighting or read the scripts that they were rejecting. And I was able to see, sort of what that looked like. And then I graduated college and found my way into the writer's room of a Cartoon Network show. My very first show was a kids animated show. It was based on Mad Magazine. I don't know if anybody remembers it. It was called Mad.
What was the cartoon?
It was called Mad. It was an animated sketch show. It was kind of perfect for, me being this young, upstart 20-something from college and, making jokes about Anne Hathaway in an animated format. But it was great, of course, because it was this first official writing job that then led to others. And so, yeah, just to sort of, shorten this really long story, I had that first job and then I kind of, darted around. I worked at the Aquabats Super Show after that. And they're the best too. Another dream come true because I was a ska kid. And so to be able to, call them my friends and then work on that show, which was basically, I always pitched it as like shitty superheroes fighting shitty villains, like kind of Batman, 60s Batman in that way. And then also like, mashed into some Japanese sort of sensibility to it. It always felt very like Power Rangers in a really fun.
Have writing credit. Don't you also have an acting credit for that?
I do.
Show?
I do. Yeah. I don't act. I only act. I'll tell you how that came to be. I only act when people like beg me, and then not that they beg me, but like.
We don't have you for this sketch. It's not going to be seen by anybody.
Yeah, I only act when people are in a bind, which is what happened with the Aquabats Super Show. So I wrote in the first season, and then it was a really funky production where, like, I don't know, we don't need to get into the business of it, but like they had like a smaller episode order for the subsequent seasons. I was on a stand-up tour. I was doing stand-up in San Francisco. And I get a call from the producer of the show, and, basically they said, hey, listen, we are in the middle of shooting whatever season they were on. We're in Utah, and the young lady that we cast in this role is just not funny and is not like hitting the lines in the way that we really need. What is your availability? Can you come tomorrow? And I said, well, I'm like about to do a shitty stand-up show in a fucking basement. I'm busy. No, they were like, listen, we'll fly you from San Francisco. This shit never happens to me, by the way. So even though they were my friends. So I got flown from San Francisco to Utah, and I spent, I want to say like 2 weeks, and I learned lines like on the plane, and I got to play a character named Gina who lost her cat, and the cat was taken by a villain called Kitty Litter, and I turned to the Aquabats for their help. And then I think another part of the episode was Crash McLarson is allergic to cats and hates cats, and then I hate him for hating cats. Anyway, super fun. But that's how that acting credit came to be. And even though I made a silly little reel with that clip on there, I would not, I haven't acted much since. So I don't believe that.
Hey, you got enough to get on IMDb as both a writer and an actor. So, nailed it.
Thank you. Nailed it. I also occasionally do voiceover. I have a voice credit on Mr. Pickles on Adult Swim, and I have a voice credit on something I'm really proud of. Didn't get me more voice acting, but who cares? It's a little DreamWorks show called Hamsters with Mustaches that my friend Donnie Michelli made. And he just wanted me to do my own voice, which is the only way that I'm going to get cast in anything. Anyway, I played a hamster.
I love it. so far, just talking about your past, you've talked about like when you want to make, or when you were younger and you'd want to like think of ways to make your toys like make people laugh, and then now you've talked about like the Pixar thing. All of these very much leading into your Treehouse of Horror.
Right. Yes.
segment.
Yes.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. Wow. It all comes full circle.
Hey.
Yeah. So, okay. I know I'm taking my time, but
you're great. No, love it. Take as much time as you'd like.
Great. So yeah, from the Aquabats, I bounced around and did my thing. Went on. I think I've been on like 5 or 6 stand-up tours by myself. My style of doing it was I don't really like to wait for anybody to give me a green light, so I tend to make my own, and I just would book the stand-up tours on my own. Super fun because I wanted to see the country, and I would just rent a car and just like drive. I did 2 stand-up tours going through the South. One that was called I just really wanted to go to Dollywood tour, and I did. I was in a comedy festival in New Orleans, and I drove from New Orleans to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, which is a 10-hour drive by myself, and I made it. I went to Dollywood by myself as well, but it was great, and that's a whole other podcast to talk about how amazing Dollywood is. I'm also a huge theme park nerd, so again, that's
we'll have to
another podcast
and all the other stuff we can get into.
Great. Yeah, and then in between that, I would just be constantly either freelancing, a lot of kids animated showrooms, especially now, it's more like a freelance writer's room. And so it would be easy for me to like be on the road, but then also like, video in or call in, and then I'd get an assignment, I'd write. And, also on top of that, I'd be writing my own pilots and just working. And then leading into The Simpsons, I think that all of the factors of the fact that I had, at that point, like a longer IMDb of credits that I'd done, and I'd had, like however many, like 9 or ish years of experience as a professional writer. And then I had, packets and whatever. I also had, and you can kind of see it in the background. This is a show. I'm so bad. This is a show called Townies. This was, I would consider a break for me, where it is a show that I created, a show that got produced by Adaptive Studios, who are one of the production companies that produce Project Greenlight. I had been able to connect with them and pitch that show to them as, a total lark, as most things in Hollywood happen. They asked me if I had any show ideas. I'd worked on a CW show, and I'd known one of the producers who then became a development exec over there. And I lied and I said, yes, I have so many ideas. I want to come in and pitch you all of them. And I sat
looking around the room, the story of the lamp.
Yeah, the story of the yogurt cup. The story of, it basically almost was that. I sat down and was like, well, what do I want to pitch? What is funny to me? And the idea of like the untold story of the horny teens of the Old West popped into my brain. And I went, that's funny. I love Westerns. I grew up, I went to an arts high school, and then going into film school. But at my arts high school, my film teachers were these like old John Ford loving guys who, taught us about all the Westerns, and then also, things that have Western sensibilities, but don't necessarily look like they're in the Old West, which I think is really great and cool. For example, Mandalorian now is such a great example of that. And then I've also seen like every episode of the OC. So I was like, let's use this knowledge that I had. And so then I pitched this show called Townies, and it's the OC in the Old West, and it's about the crazy, sexy teens of the Pioneer era. It stars Natalie Palamides, who is now, her star is rising and rising. She just came out with a Netflix special called Nate that Amy Poehler produced, and she was our star, so you can kind of see her. She's right there in the red. And she played a girl named Boy, who dreams of being the first hangwoman executioner. And so it kind of, the first season culminates in a 2-parter finale where her mentor, played by John Ennis from Mr. Show, leads her to victory of participating in a hanging competition, which is exactly what it sounds. And it was really fun because we shot in an Old West town near Vegas. and we didn't have enough money to shut down the Old West town. So they were like German tourists that were like coming into Video Village while I was like there with my script, like, excuse me. And they were watching actors get hung on our set. But yeah, that was produced and that came out. It was on a streaming platform called Black Pills, which is basically the Quibi of France. So unfortunately, it's not available. But
is it as successful as Euro Krusty Land?
Yeah, pretty much as successful. Though I will say, I went on a trip with my husband to Paris for I think our first anniversary, and naturally I can't go anywhere without doing some stand-up. So I got on a show, and normally on stand-up shows they're like, "What are your credits?" And nobody ever cares because nothing I ever work on is front page news except for The Simpsons. And so I told them, I was like, well, no one's going to know my credits, especially because I'm from America, but like, tell them I had a show on Black Pills. And because I forgot that it's a French production company or whatever, they were like, oh my God, like it was as if I did NBC or whatever. Anyway, I made Townies. It was great. And then that led to, I reconnected with my old boss at FX, and we were just having coffee, just, catching up. And she mentioned to me, oh, well, do you know that The Simpsons is looking for a writer right now? And immediately I was like, oh, I don't know, and of course had the podcast at this point, and of course had the book out at this point, but, and also, had developed relationships with writers at the show and showrunners at the show and whatever.
The podcast around Springfield? Yeah,
around Springfield. But I never wanted to cross that boundary. And I don't know, maybe it's because I grew up in LA that I have been like acutely aware of people that are opportunists, and I just never want to be that way, but I also know that you have to shoot your shot. So it's really hard, but she was so great. She was like, listen, if you have a hard time sending in your stuff because of whatever, send it to me. I'll send it to the show. Cause she is this woman who is still there. She's an exec at FX. And she's like, it's easy for me to do it. Just let me do it. So,
something all 700 episodes play for a marathon.
I know. Right? Well, anyway, so yeah, she submitted, and then I got an email from Al Jean saying like he read the scripts for Townies and he really liked it.
You went that was just way too like casual again. You received an email from Al Jean. What happened? Like, I mean, did your mind explode? Like what?
Well, he had already been on the podcast a couple of times, so we had had a relationship with him. But he's still like, very up
Simpsons
there,
royalty.
Mount Olympus. Yeah, Simpsons world, crazy. But I mean, still, like, it's very like holy shit inducing to have anybody read your scripts, nonetheless somebody who you really look up to like Al. So that was the next step. And he emailed me saying like, I read your scripts, I really liked them. I would like to offer you a Simpsons freelance project. And I was like, I don't know what that means. Like I got that email and was like, what is
Googling Simpsons freelance project?
Yeah, it was a very anxiety inducing like 20 minutes. And then I wrote back to him and said like, great. Like, what do you want me to do? Like watch all 30 years? Like, what's going on? And that's when he told me, oh, I want it to be the Halloween episode. You're going to do the Halloween episode. And so I fell out of my chair. And it just, like it was the beginning of what would become the most surreal experience of both my personal and professional life. And then from there, like, I won't get into the logistics of coming in. I mean, all the emails back and forth. I'm trying
to start with the first one and read through all of your correspondence.
But basically, around that time, he'd asked me to come up with segment pitches. And so I researched and watched every single Treehouse in a row, which was great and fun because it was basically like stumbling upon a spinoff of the show that never happened because I was just in horror world for so long. And then I wrote like 5 segment pitches, and I turned them in a couple days before I was scheduled to come into the room. And then, what can I say? I came in, we broke story. And one of, I had a couple from the sheet that I submitted that got plucked to be broken as a room. And then one of those was B9 Rewind, which is a segment that I'm really, really glad got through because I love Lisa, obviously. And I
that
think it turned out really well.
Happy Death Day, right?
Yeah, like Russian Doll.
A fantastic, I like that one a lot. And then it's always nice to see Lisa and Nelson. They're kind of a weird, odd couple, but it goes all the way back to when they dated early on.
I know. Yeah, I think that there's always a tenderness between them too, because that episode where they dated is so sweet, and I think that it's like, really the first time you see vulnerability with his character, and you see the bigger, sadder picture of like what his home life is, and so. I know that bullies are all sort of like stifling some sort of trauma, which is why they're acting out. But I felt like they did that episode really, really well. So it was really great to kind of have, a revisit of that dynamic.
So whenever you get a segment for Halloween, Treehouse of Horror into the show, do you also actively help contribute, like breaking down other segments? Is it kind of a group effort of that?
So I should clarify. I came in. They don't break up the writing of the Treehouse episodes per segment anymore. So it's just one writer that is told, go off and write this now. So it was like breaking 3 segments as a room, and then given the notes from the writer's assistant to go off and write that first draft.
See, I did not know that. I thought I was under the impression we're obviously in season 11 on this show revisiting the Simpsons, and I was under the impression that they were always broken up. But do you happen to know when that changed? Just out of curiosity.
I think that you could sort of see. I don't know if it was like an official, like we're only doing this now, but you can kind of see on the Wikipedia just like when that changed. I don't know why it changed. I'm happy it changed.
Yeah, it worked out well. That's really fun.
Worked out for me. So yeah. I mean, and it was interesting. I've never written an episode of like this before, though I have certainly written shorter episodes of animation television before, like 11-minute episodes, which is standard for kids animation. So it was kind of like that. It was interesting to like feel all of my different paths of comedy writing and comedy experience sort of culminating into this, because as I mentioned, like Channel 101, if you don't know, it's a community of creators and filmmakers and actors and what have you. But like, it was basically created by Dan Harmon and Rob Schraub as a reaction to, like going through development hell and having to hear terrible studio notes and being like, we just want to create a community where people come together and they make like, community. They make like 5-minute pilots, and the audience votes on which shows they want to see the second episode of, or which ones they want to cancel. And so then it becomes this very like low stakes, low bar for failure, high bar for creativity. And also, writing a full story in 5 minutes became this really great creative challenge that I know helped my writing when it came to going into my first couple writers' rooms, and especially with short form. I think a lot of people think that animation writing in general is less than live action writing, which it isn't, of course. And I think B, if it's like a shorter episode, if it's a 15-minute, whatever, 11-minute, that it's going to be less story, therefore, less of a pain to kind of navigate the A, B, C story, whatever. It's often harder because you have to really move at a clipped pace. So writing a script where there were 3 segments that were basically like 7 minutes each, was a great challenge that, allowed me to kind of lean back on those skills that I had already sharpened in all those different ways.
Very cool. So you mentioned bullies, and that does remind me of something I wanted to bring up. The only negative thing I'm going to say in this entire episode, because we like to stay positive, there seemed to be a certain political sect of people that really came down hard on how political your episode was, which just made me laugh because your entire beginning segment was essentially a callback to one of the earliest Treehouse of Horror, where we get, it doesn't matter which one of you vote for, that type of thing. And honestly, I just wanted to give you a second to address like the ridiculous of that, if you even want to.
I mean, there isn't any part of that episode that is as edgy as abortions for some, tiny American flags for others. But it's funny that happened recently. I think because, I mean, the riot at the Capitol is so horrendous and in no way, I think, is connected to Simpsons predicting anything. I've also been rewatching Futurama now that my Seinfeld binge is over, and like, if anything's predicting the future, it's fucking Futurama. I don't know if we can curse on this, but
of course, yes.
It's funny. I just got reached out to. I haven't responded, and I don't know if I will, but I got reached out to by like a Russian TV channel to comment on the opening. And I'm like, if there's anyone I'm not talking to about no, Shane, I bet you do a great job. But it's just so far-fetched. And, I have to go back to what I think both Al Jean and Matt Selman have said time and time again when it comes to responding to Simpsons Predicted It. Listen, it is a TV show that mines stories from life, that mines stories from experience that has been on for an unfathomable amount of years. It's a numbers game of what is actually going to spark and become what is predicting our current reality or the future. When it comes to like the specifics of the politics in that cold open, I mean, they're all facts. Like, besides the apocalyptic end, if people are coming for the scroll of all the bad things that Trump has done, or coming for, the treatment of the electoral process in general, I don't know what to tell you. There are like heavily medicated octogenarians at every single polling place. I think in the room I mentioned like weird adult sons need to have a presence it has to be like an elderly person and their weird adult son there, which I think was represented in the end. I mean, like, I don't know. I know that there's also been a lot of chatter about like, who would Homer vote for if he was going to vote for somebody in this election in 2020? He probably would vote.
Honestly, I think he would get off the couch. Yeah, he's sitting in his hammock.
But exactly. But I remember seeing articles that were like, Homer would have voted for Trump because of X, Y, and Z. And I'm just like, this is a bridge too far, you guys. Like, I highly encourage you to open the door and go outside masked. And then I think also people were getting at like, oh, how could they have put masks on the characters? It's easy to slap that on later in the animation process. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah. We didn't. We were in the room. I had pitched a separate bad cold open that should not have gone, and thankfully it didn't. I pitched a separate one, and then we looked at the clock / calendar and went, oh shit, this is happening right before the election. Might as well write about it, and that's what happened.
The bottom line is we all need to be terrified in 3 days, right?
Oh, God. I really love so much anxiety every day of my life now with that.
True. That's what I get for voting for Kanye.
I know.
Are you okay with sharing what your words bad cold open was? Like, what was the other?
Sure, I'll tell you what the bad cold open was. I mean, we were just having fun. I was trying to figure out. This is also This is also before the ink had dried on the Disney merger. Speaking of being a theme park nerd, I kept thinking about the presence of Simpsons in Universal Studios parks, and I thought it would be fun to have the cold open be a Universal tour through Springfield and to have the tours stop in front of the Simpsons house or whatever, and to have Bart come out dead-eyed like Norman Bates. And I thought it would be fun if he started slashing people on the tour ride, and then the blood splatter, and it spelled out Treehouse of Horror.
Honestly, I would have loved that. And I actually shout out. We have a friend named Skipper Bob who actually does Disney theme park vlogging,
Cool.
and I think he would have absolutely.
Skipper Bob, was he an actual skipper on Jungle Cruise?
No, I don't think so. I think he just likes the. I think he just likes the title. Frankly, we should probably ask him.
I listen. Sure, writing for The Simpsons is a definite dream job, but my real dream job is to be a skipper on Jungle Cruise.
I feel like you could probably, like, at this point, you're in with Disney, The Simpsons, like they're in with Disney. Like, you could probably get some strings pulled if you really wanted to do a Jungle Cruise.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I had a friend who was like, pre-COVID, he was like, you do that and I'll shoot a documentary about it. And I was like, you just want to shoot a documentary? That's not
watch that documentary, honestly. I'm a documentary nerd.
Well, I did work for the Disney Resort in college. As I mentioned, I went to Chapman, which is 5 minutes away from Disneyland. But I worked at the Rainforest Cafe in downtown Disney. So like, you don't get to audition to be a Jungle Cruise skipper. I don't know if you know this. It's horseshit. I'm airing my beef right now. It's horseshit. But you can't audition. It is run by the resort operations, I believe. It's not a performance on like what they call face characters. I know a lot about this. Also, my mom has worked for Disney for 30 years, so I should say that too. I grew up going to the park, but so when I went to go apply for a job at Disneyland in college, I wanted to be a Jungle Cruise skipper, and it is just truly luck of the draw. So my misfortune was that my quote-unquote luck landed me at downtown Disney as part of the Disneyland Resort, but as a worker in the gift shop. So I've heard Pop Calypso a lot, and I once saw Kelsey Grammer yell at his kids.
How exciting. Hey, it's stressful going to a theme park sometimes. It brings out the worst in all of us at times.
Oh, yeah. I kind of love it, though, because as a childless elder millennial, I love the schadenfreude of watching people dissolve before my very eyes.
I get a real, like, kind of similar joy from reading those, like, posts from parents that are at Disney talking about how people like us have no right to be there because we don't have children.
I've heard that.
Like, excuse you? Like, shouldn't you be like teaching them something? I have free time.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, full disclosure, I used to pre-COVID, I really loved to write at Disney.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I would go all the time alone.
Are you really bummed that they got rid of the season pass?
They're going to introduce something new. I mean, yes and no. I bought a season pass literally 3 days before COVID. And so I've been holding out for a real one this entire time. But I know that I'm looking forward to my refund. But I know that they're going to reintroduce something that's like the Magical Journey Membership Club or like something stupid. So, yeah, I'm fine to answer your question.
It's obvious. We can tell. I think that's really cool. I mean, obviously, you've hit a dream that a lot of people have writing for The Simpsons. And as you put it earlier, and I think that's such a great attitude and something we should celebrate, it's not a finish line. It is a stepping stone to future projects. And I know that you're still creating. I know that actually we should shout out our mutual friend, Rosie Carruth, who recently took your
pitch packet class.
There you go. Yeah, you're teaching writing as well and teaching how to get your foot in the door.
Yeah, well, I'm teaching that class, and I'm so Rosie's the best. I'm so happy that she took it and introduced us. Yes. But I also another thing that's kind of in a funny COVID specific way, like this could never have happened without COVID. So thank you, COVID. But I got hit up. I'm happy the pandemic is happening. I'm the only one saying that right now. I got approached by my alma mater, Chapman University, 6 months ago, whenever before the fall semester happened, to teach animation writing. So
Cool.
I am a part-time professor now at the college, which I think is proof that college is fake. But it's
Stick it out, get your tenure, and write it out.
yeah, tenure. No, I just finished teaching the fall semester, and I just got asked to teach spring, which I agreed to because I had a lot of fun and I met a lot of really talented, nice, smart students, and it was a blast. And I did bring in a bunch of guest speakers, like Josh Weinstein from The Simpsons, and a bunch of different people, development exec at Disney that I know, and other successful animation weirdos. But I'm going to do it one more semester probably, and then hopefully the world will not be so virtual. But that's been kind of a fun, like, weird, who knows. I also should tell you, it is, besides the Simpsons episode, it is the most proud my mom has ever been.
That's something.
She's like,
your mom, you're cool. That's awesome.
Yeah,
You're on your way to becoming a skipper.
College asked you. It also, this also shows like how detached my dad is. I told him that I was teaching one class at college, and he was like, "Oh, you're about to make so much money." No, what are you talking about? No, what?
They probably said the same thing whenever you got the job writing for The Simpsons too.
Yeah, buy me a boat. That's a little closer.
Yeah, no, I've heard good things, but it's just fun. I listened to the commentary tracks on all the DVDs that were available for this episode or for this podcast, and that's pretty much the common thread of like, yeah, people assume we're a lot wealthier than we are.
Well, yes, and they are. They're playing it down. I will say it took me to my core to learn. I'm sure you know that Mike Scully is the reason why The Simpsons is a WGA show. He's the one that flipped it to Union. Do you know this?
Yes.
By the way, nicest, best guy in the world.
He was recently on the show.
Was he really?
Yeah,
he's
great.
I love him. I feel like there's so many young writers that are like, maybe he would hate to hear this, but he's like dad. He's just the best. I was shocked to hear that before he flipped them to be part of the WGA, that they were, I think maybe they were part of the Animation Guild, but I'm not sure. But like up until season 8, I want to say the writers were earning like, I won't say the numbers, but is it a fourth or a fifth? I think it's a fifth of what they make now per episode.
Oh, wow.
So like, can you imagine?
Wow.
Being like, and I think Scully said this, like, when he was flipping them to be a part of the union, they were being paid so low per episode for arguably some of the best television that has ever existed.
Yeah. We're
talking up until season 8. Are you kidding me? And they were having to take second jobs, other freelance jobs, to basically have a livable wage, which is the story of a lot of animation writers, especially if they are writing for shows that are in the Animation Guild. Listen, you didn't come here for a union talk. But
it's educational. I'm sure it's great.
Welcome to, it's not all fun and dick jokes, okay? It is about 401ks as well and residual statements. Anyway, that shocked me. I would have assumed that they were always part of the union, but it has been an uphill battle for especially animation. Anyway, that's it.
So back to your more creative aspects, and then we actually will briefly talk about Treehouse of Horror 10 today.
I know. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. What are you currently working on? What are you most excited about right now that you want people to know about?
I'm working on a lot of things that are covered by NDAs that I can't talk about.
If you talk about it in Big Latin, it doesn't break rules. I'm confident that's law.
What can I say? I mean, I can say that I'm excited for a lot of things that I'm working on, and I can say
curious to adjectives to describe yourself.
If anyone's hearing, maybe that Russian TV channel's hearing me right now, and so having to be in the crosshairs. No, it has been a good time for animation during COVID. I think it's safe to say, for reasons that are probably obvious to you guys, that there's less risk of transmission in working from home on animation shows. So having the animation background as a writer that I do, I think has been a really great asset, where I have been reached out to be like the writer attached to adult animated pitches that I'm taking out. And then I've also had my own stuff that I'm pitching and writing. And so that's been very exciting. I'm writing an animated movie right now that's being produced by a company that if I mentioned it, you would probably go, ooh.
We'll just say something that got scrambled. Richie, 3, 2, 1.
Ooh. Thank you, studio.
And that's fun. I'm excited about that. What else can I say? Oh God, I don't know. Yeah, I'm sorry to say that like none of the stuff that I'm working on has been announced, which is another downside to working in animation. It takes forever for it to reach a point of like, and now we're gonna watch it, because it takes so long. But it's all good. What can I say that is actually something that people can enjoy? Well, before COVID, I hosted a monthly show that was, it's called the Julia Prescott Lecture Series. I don't know where I got the title. It used
you already mentioned you were a creative. It's fine.
Yes, thank you. I'm so good at titling things. It used to be called the Nerd Melt Lecture Series because it took place at Meltdown Comics, rest in peace, a venue, a popular venue out here in LA, or it used to be. The building's been demolished for condos, you guys. Also, Meltdown Comics, I think Matt Groening, he has some part of designing the logo for them, or maybe I'm thinking of Daniel Klaus, but anyway, whatever. But now it's called Julia Prescott Lecture Series. Before COVID, I would host it every month at this place called the Lyric Hyperion Theater. And I would just bring together a panel of professionals, and we would talk about, a specific central question about breaking in. I hosted a lot of panels that were, like the writers of Rick and Morty. I did that a couple times because a lot of those guys are from Channel 101. So I already knew them. And I was like, oh, you think you're a big shot now? I do, the writers of Conan.
Major successful shows.
Good luck. Anyway, I say all this to say it has continued in the COVID era. Of course, it is now virtual. And even though the next show hasn't been announced, it's been kind of hard to do it once a month because the world is burning. Sorry guys, but I'm going to be continuing that in February. So if you want more info on that, you can check me out at julieprescott.com. And I will probably announce, whatever. Or if you want to be a part of the newsletter that I send out to announce upcoming shows, it's jplectureseries@gmail.com. So that's an exciting thing. And then, I've been teaching workshops sponsored by Hoo Ha Ha, Elizabeth Banks's company, which is very cool, like the pitch packet class. And then I may be teaching a pilot class, but I'm not sure. So that's something else that is exciting to look forward to. If you're a student at Chapman, take my class.
You probably offer online classes now, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's been great in that way. I'm trying to think of like anything else that is like fun and exciting that I could talk about. I don't know.
I'll make it easier on you. How about you already shed some light on the sleeper hit Seinfeld. But is there anything else that you're just a fan of that you want to shed, like maybe something that you're like, hey, you probably haven't heard of this, but watch whatever.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you have, in teaching Gen Z right now, I'm realizing that the children don't know a lot.
It is the children who are wrong.
It is the children who are wrong. I have actually been saying that a lot in my house lately. And I can't even remember the context, but it is one of the most beautiful lines ever. The children don't know about a lot. I had this thought the other day where I was like, do I have to teach the children about the band Gorillaz? I hope I don't. They should know.
Yeah,
I think I do. There was only one student in my group of 12 at Chapman who really knew about The Simpsons. That's another.
Wow.
That's another. He was also an ass kisser, so maybe he researched me. Anyway,
hope you're watching.
I think that the children need to get a trial for CBS All Access and check out old episodes of Strangers with Candy, because I think that it has been lost from the collective consciousness, and it is so important, required viewing.
I love that show in the 90s. Like, that was Comedy Central, like 96, I feel like, somewhere in like that era.
It was later. It was early 2000s. I think the video, it was shot on video, so it looks older than it is, but it also is, thematically closer to what they were trying to achieve with it being an after school special. This is kind of old by now, but another show that like completely broke me in a way that like, you watch a show and you go, who is this for? Because it is only for me. And I think that like this is the most specific of that. But Documentary Now is so brilliant, and I don't think that we're talking about it enough. I know it's been a couple of years since the last episode was aired, or maybe a year. I don't even know what time it is anymore. But that is a show that I just think I just want to bask in it. And the co-op episode was so great. Every episode is so great. It was on IFC. I don't know what IFC is anymore, but it's out there somewhere. I'm trying to think of other things. I just watched WandaVision, the first 2 episodes.
I've not watched it yet, but it's on the to-do list.
It's great. I'm not a Marvel person at all. I mean, I can enjoy an Ant-Man because of Paul Rudd, mainly. But I loved it for probably reasons that Marvel diehards will dislike it. A lot of people are saying it's too slow, but I think that it's such a big creative swing. It's the 2 episodes, the first 2 episodes take place in this like sort of 50s, but then going into the 60s, black and white, I Love Lucy type world. I think that it's written really well for one of those, like the jokes are hitting in the style of that. And I think it's really hard to ape a style that you did not, come up in, and to ape a style that no longer exists, but it feels really great and strong and confident. And then of course the actors are like really, really delivering. So I recommend it for that. I know that there is mystery afoot, and I'm excited to see how it turns out. Something that I think that people missed when it came out, that I thought was really great that's animated, is I think it's called Undone. Do you know the show?
I haven't seen this one.
It was created by Raphael, whatever his name is, from BoJack Horseman. And,
oh my God!
And another writer whose name I forget, unfortunately, a woman. And it is a rotoscope animated show with, I think her name is Rosa Salazar, the actress. And it is, maybe you guys have seen A Scanner Darkly or, some of the other rotoscope animated shows. So a lot of rotoscope stuff, not like there is a lot, but a lot of the stuff that I've seen, has been using that technology as sort of a way to, add texture to a story that doesn't necessarily connect to why rotoscoping is being used, and it always feels kind of uncanny valley. This uses the technology of rotoscoping in a way that is so integral to the story that it's just brilliant. Like it's about sort of losing your sanity. It's about drifting between realities and worlds that like allow, when we write animation, and I think Scully has been really, great at having this quote tied to him, but he's always said that, like, especially in the Simpsons writers' room, there always had to be per episode a moment that justified the animation, whether it is going into Homer's brain or whether it is, the simple fact of him going to space, but so, more importantly, like, what are the things that could never exist in reality? And I always think about that when I'm writing animation, like, what is that moment to justify it? And I feel like Undone is like a whole series example of, why do we need this to be animated? And it's not really a comedy, it's more of a drama. But, it makes it more interesting. I think it's available on Amazon. And I'm trying to think of other shows I've been watching, but that was a lot that I just said.
Oh, that's great. No, you touched on a lot. I love BoJack Horseman, so I'm gonna have to check that out for sure.
It's great. It's just like it weighs a little heavy on you in a way that I think is good. It's a good uncomfortable versus the bad.
I would agree with that for sure.
Yeah.
Richie, I feel like I've been hugging a lot of the time per usual. Sorry, is there any
yeah, Richie,
that you have?
who are you?
I know, like it's Julia, you're just going. So I just wanted to say, like, I haven't got to watch a Treehouse in many, many years just because I haven't had a way to watch it because I've been without TV until recently. But I do have a service that I can watch the newer episodes on. So I got to watch your episode.
He streamed it illegally.
Oh, it was legal. But I mean, the morbid way that you did Bart on Toy Gory just like got to me. And I think if I would have seen that as a kid, it would have been one of those like when Ned Flanders gets his head chopped off from the gremlin in an earlier tree. Like that was very, very good. I loved all three of the segments in the Treehouse Horror, and I have not seen one in a very, very long time. So it was really, really fun to get back into that. And when I saw your name pop up, I had the same question as Miles that you already answered about like, did you write all three segments or how did it go about that? So I love that the same writer gets their hands on everything now just to let you wrap it all in together. And please pass it along to everybody. Please stay as political as you guys are, because the Simpsons have always been, and they should always be. They're always challenging the system. And that's just, I mean, we're just making fun of real life. And if we can't do that, then what are we doing?
I'll pass that word on. And I think,
I'll say that. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I think that that's the spirit anyway of just like, it should be comedy first. And with that, drifts away sort of the control of like, well, they've always been very like nihilistic when it comes to like corporate overlords and etc. So
all the Disney jokes now hit so much harder than they used
to. Disney Princess Homer, I absolutely loved.
Oh yeah, that was great. I mean, there was a lot of what do they call it? Synergy going on. But and of course they made a ton of jokes about Disney before the merger, but now I feel like it just has opened up this whole new path. And I can't wait for them to just like really hand Bob Iger and Bob Chapek a new one.
And on the whole political note that Richie just mentioned too, one of my all-time favorite jokes going all the way back to, I think, season 5 or 6-ish, somewhere in there, when Stampy is like going through both the Republican and the Democratic conventions, and it's like the Democrats are like, we can't govern, and the Republicans, we're just plain evil. Still one of my favorite jokes of all time on The Simpsons. And the idea that The Simpsons is now getting too political is just ridiculous. But
I know. It's too silly. I mean, if anything, it's not South Park, so it's just a different game too. And I feel like any political joke that I've seen from The Simpsons has never been punching down. No, it's always just been like, yeah, this is stating the facts.
Facts hurt feelings sometimes. Okay.
What are we doing?
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway.
Julia, you've been an absolute blast to talk to. We've now taken more of your time than I told you we were. So if you want, we can call this episode here, and Richie and I can come back and talk Treehouse of Horror 10 another time. But if you have anything that you want to say about that episode, or any insight or thoughts or feelings that you want to share, I'd be happy to let you talk about that.
I mean, I happy to be here, so whatever, but like I love this. I mean, treehouses are great, obviously, they just always are, but something that like specific about this episode, I know that Simpsons writer Tim Long, shout out to Tim, the best, he also, I've said this before but I'll say it again, he was instrumental in, I believe, my success of writing the episode, because before I even came in to the show, he was emailing with me back and forth and, basically coaching me and saying like, this is what you need to do. And, was just like such a stand-up dude for that. I was obviously freaking out. And he, very calmly and patiently was like, it's not a big deal. Here's what goes down, which is hard for going into any writer's room. I've been in the second season of many writers' rooms, and it's very intimidating because you don't know what jokes are off limits, and you don't know, what they've already pitched that's been rejected. So he was really helpful in that. But I know that he wrote the desperately seeking Xena segment.
Lucy Lawless and that whole segment is so great, and I love the way she makes fun of herself at the end. It's always nice.
I told you I was not Xena. That's such a great joke. Like that's a real clapper joke. But I know that like Tim has gone on the record to say that his favorite jokes that he's ever written for the show is in this segment, which is Xena needs Zex. Which I hope lands in his obituary. Hopefully not in many, 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 many years. But I love that is a part of his legacy. So I just wanted to quickly give him a shout out for that.
For sure. I love it when celebrities are like in on the joke and realize that it's like you can tell a lot of times with the celebrity guest when they are really into it and they completely get it. And it seemed like Lucy Lawless was one of those celebrities that's just like, oh yeah, I can see why this is funny. I can totally be one of comic book guys, collectibles.
Mm-hmm. And generally somebody who, I my favorite performers, especially like comedy performers, are people who are not afraid to look ugly. And going back to Strangers with Candy, like I can't imagine a performer like Amy Sedaris, like she is going not only ugly, but the ugliest you could make somebody, not just in her personality, but in her appearance. And so I think that like having humility when you are, especially like someone who is famous for being sexy, to poke fun at yourself, I think is such a great superpower. And I want it for everybody. Every A-lister, I think, needs to look ugly. Which is why I think Brad Pitt is one of the greatest comedic performers of all time.
Because he's willing to put himself out there like that.
He's a character actor. My husband and I talk about it all the time. We're like, he happens to be handsome, but he's a character actor.
I love how he
he's weird, man.
Is eating in almost every movie, and gratuitously eating like all the time.
It's the Ocean's ones, though, right? Particularly the Ocean's movies.
It is in those specifically. Where I don't know. I feel like he's always, maybe that just implanted on my mind. I think he's eating. I did love his appearance or sort of appearance in the Deadpool films too. That was great.
That was really funny.
I can't remember that he was in them.
He was the invisible character, but he actually was on set, and he actually so kind of the joke is they hired this really attractive guy to play a character that isn't seen at all at any point.
Funny. I didn't know that.
I think actually there's like one shot of him where he's getting electrocuted, and you can actually see that it's him as he's like getting electrocuted, but he's otherwise invisible. The entire film.
That sounds like those Deadpool rascals.
Those guys and their jokes. Yeah, I'm excited for. They did announce the Deadpool 3. I know you said you're not a Marvel fan, but the third.
I'm into Deadpool because I feel like that's different than. I don't like lore.
That's fair.
I'm realizing, like, I have no patience for lore. I'm just like, reality is hard enough. I know this is not a popular opinion, especially for a nerdy.
This alternative history, all right.
I don't need. Listen, I lived through Harry Potter, and I read all the books when they came out, and I'm a fan. I separate it from the creator and her personal opinion. But I've already memorized like a full academic load at Hogwarts, so I don't need to fit anything else in there about like what is this an Easter egg for? What like as a writer,
your herbology grade is slipping. You should really focus on that.
I just don't care. Even things that are serialized, I'm like, oh. I just want to write episodic.
That's fair. I am a fan of the lore of certain things, but I can completely understand where at times it's just like, no, this is too heavy. Like this is probably going to be an unpopular opinion or statement right now, but I'm not a Doctor Who fan, and part of the reason is I can't get into it now because there's too much of it, and like I
feel the same way about 90 Day Fiance. There's too much.
Sorry, guys.
I started watching 90 Day Fiance. I watched one season and then I was like, great, I'm watching the season. Now I can talk to my friends about it. And I turn to my friend who watches and I go, oh, by the way, like this and that and this. And they're like, what are you talking about? That was 5 years ago. I'm on this. It was just like, no, it's too much. And now I'm starting to see commercials where it's like a streaming service, I'm guessing, just showing 90 Day Fiance. And it's just, how did this happen? I'm sorry to derail.
No,
like, it's too much lore.
I say that right now, but I'm currently like halfway through a binge of every season of Survivor. So like I clearly am like
Allie Gertz just did that too.
Oh, fantastic. Maybe we can get a little like side podcast going on Survivor.
Surviving Survivor.
Sure.
Surviving Survivor.
I would love for you to come for my throne.
But yeah, the 90 Day Fiance, I guess I haven't gotten into that one. I don't usually like reality TV, but there's something about Survivor that has just been
I get it.
Background noise I need right now.
I love Amazing Grace.
The
Amazing Race. I love the Amazing Race for that. But I'm also a huge Bachelorette person. It is the ultimate way to unwind, especially in these pressing times. So we can go there. But even that, there's no lore. Like, it's just like people that got to fuck and people who didn't. And that's it. That's it. That's done. Maybe there's like one Kristen who shows up in a season and they're like, oh, well, she used to be blah. But they also guide you. They do last week on Bachelor, basically.
It's like dumb. Every episode basically every reality TV episode recaps the entire season of like, so it's like, why does anybody watch anything other than the last episode? I don't know, but I do.
Also, 90 Day Fiance, like there's a sadness. There's a sadness with these people. They are desperate and we are all complicit in being viewers to someone losing their 401k to a basic stranger. Again, a different podcast. But
this is like the Enter the Spider-Verse of podcasts right now.
Yeah,
it's bringing in a little bit of everything.
I just want Barry season 3 to come out. That's what I want.
Oh, Barry's good. Barry's good. Very talented comic and writer Emily Heller writes for Barry. So good for Emily, good for Barry. And speaking of documentary now, Bill Hader. See, I'm connecting it.
There we go. We're weaving.
We're back.
Let's briefly talk about the other two segments of Treehouse of Horror 10 so that we can technically have completed our job today.
Hey, we have more?
We said 90s a whole lot in the last little bit, or at least 90 Day Fiance, which it basically sums up the I Know What You Italy Did Last Summer segment. That literally on the commentary, I believe it was Ian Maxton Graham who wrote that one. He's like, I went and saw the movie I Know What You Did Last Summer, and then we needed a Treehouse story. So I wrote this with commentary on how this idea came to be. He also said that he had written the episode and then moved on to another show. I can't remember what it was at this point, but basically when it aired, he was very surprised that Ned was now a werewolf. That was the original script.
Yeah, that happens.
The Simpsons killed a Flanders before a Simpsons killed a Flanders too.
Yeah.
A few episodes down the road.
I love, yeah. Right. And she's the person that they turn to in that segment for answers for a brief break. I love the way that this story came out, and I love the werewolf turn, even though that deviates from the source material of I Know What You Did Last Summer. But I don't know. I like that recap of can't get enough of that sugar crisp and running overhead.
They apparently had to change that. Like those lyrics aren't actually that was parodying a Sugar Crisp commercial, but they changed the wording because they got complaints.
Oh, of course.
Another commentary fact.
Advertisement. Come on.
Yeah. Honestly, it's like if you get made fun of on The Simpsons, like you are a dumb company if you complain. Like, you should just accept that they're poking fun at you and like realize that's probably going to do better for you in the long run than.
Yeah, I mean, good luck telling the most humorless people ever who run these corporations that argument.
That
good
is
luck talking to a bunch of lawyers that are corporate lawyers, which means that they are an upper echelon of humorless.
Any humor that they once had was surgically removed before they got the job.
Yeah. It's complicated when you reference any, as I'm sure you know, like any product that exists in real world or any pop culture bit, because either you go with, the corporate lawyers or you go with libel. So for me, I always personally am like, let's just create our own so that nobody cares.
Yeah, no one, we don't have to worry about changing it later if we just do it up front.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. And then possibly the most 90s segment of any Treehouse of Horror ever is parodying the Y2K fiasco, disaster that wasn't, I don't know what you call it. It was very hyped. I remember everybody was freaking out about Y2K for a while. You mentioned we're both the same age. Anybody got any fun Y2K memories?
No.
I
remember creating a time capsule with my school. And I don't know what's happening with that time capsule now. But it was I should say that I had like a low-key fear of things going awry, but I also I lived through the Northridge 94 earthquake as a child, and so there was like a clear delineation of my childhood of being like bold and fearless and invincible, and then that happened, and then suddenly every room was scary.
Oh yeah,
so fun. So I think I had residual anxiety from like, nothing is for sure, young child, like things are going to be bad.
I think earthquakes are one of the most underrated, I don't know if that's the right word, right phrasing, but like they don't get enough respect in the terms of how terrifying they are. Cause like, I mean, hurricanes, tornadoes, they always get a lot of big screen time on movies and TV.
Yeah.
Like, your fucking house just started shaking. Like that's not cool, man. Like
that is not cool, man.
Shit that would like definitely not be fun to fall on me right now, and that's not fun to think about.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I've heard a lot of like LA transplants that come from Midwest or come from areas where they don't have earthquakes, and they consider it to be kind of fun. And well, in 94, we didn't have earthquake Twitter, so maybe if we did, I would have felt differently about it. I would have been able to go and see all the fun jokes everybody was making. But yeah, to me, like I had my dad, as I mentioned, he lived in an apartment when I was growing up, and I remember that Northridge quake hitting, and it like wrecked the electrical gate to let people out of the apartment. So he was like trapped inside of his apartment, and there was so much destruction. You just would see houses like with huge cracks in the middle and shit like that. Not to make this about that, but yeah.
No, I mean, I think we're far enough to remove from 94 that we can joke about it a little bit, but has it been long enough, Richie? I don't remember the rules, but no, it's
7 years or something.
I will say one thing that was so fucked up about growing up in the Valley after the fucking 94 earthquake. So that happened. And then there were all of these programs that were sort of rearranged in public schools where there was such a concentration of earthquake safety. And part of that earthquake safety public program was having people come and they would drive onto the flat top of the playground, an earthquake simulator, to have children re-experience the trauma of an earthquake.
Can you imagine the PTSD triggers that were happening?
And that happened, and then you would go to the children's museums in the area, and then they would create these exhibits that would be earthquake simulators. And I remember one had like, you'd walk into a room in the museum and there would be like a 90s TV, and it would give like a, fake news report of like, we're feeling some tremors. And then the floor, you wouldn't know that the floor was moving, like was a movable floor, I should say. And then the floor would start moving. And then you'd walk after it was done, you'd walk into the other room, and then they'd have a docent be like, all right, this is what we do when earthquakes happen. You have to go under a table. You have to do this. And sure, that information is nice, but I really wish I didn't have to revisit the trauma of what this terrible thing that happened to me that changed literally everything about my life.
Yeah, that's a heavy thing to experience as a child.
If I had any notes for 90s adults, it would be that.
Yeah.
Well, a good segue from that, going off of like what children have to practice. I actually really like that bit in the Xena part where they taught where Skinner made a crack at the radiation drills for kids, like just ducking under your chairs and whatnot.
Yeah,
they actually did that.
I know, safety theater, as they say.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Production of nothing, but and as far as the Y2K segment goes too, it is kind of fun that one's kind of half Y2K, half Maximum Overdrive, which also featured Yardley Smith as an actress in that film as well. So nice little tie over there.
I like it when they do that.
It's fun. Yeah, I like it. And they actually, I think they've already done at this point the episode Maximum Homer Drive. Yeah,
yes,
we recovered that one already. Yeah. So they've kind of teased that a couple of times, but they basically had all of the electronics in Springfield at Y2K just turn and terrorize everybody, including Marge's electric razor, which was really fun.
Lady whatever razor. I forget the name.
Yeah, same.
Lady Remington.
Yes, yep. I just like that they talk about technology and like the downfalls of technology, where it's 1999, almost 2000, and like 20 years later, it's so much worse now. So, I mean, better technology, good.
Yeah.
Are you listening?
I'm sorry, Disney.
Predicted it.
All right, so I think we've done our due. This qualifies as a coverage of Treehouse of Horror 10. We did a thing. Julia, is there anything else that you'd like to talk about, specifically Treehouse of Horror 10 or Treehouse of Horror 31, or just anything else that you were like, man, I need to make sure I get this out on the podcast today?
Gosh, what have I not said about The Simpsons? The Simpsons is good.
Perfect. We'll cut there. No.
I don't know. I mean, I would just say, if you want to be a writer, just start writing, and try to find the people that think the same way that you do, but also challenge you to be, better and better and better and better. If you are an aspiring writer and you feel like, you need to write a script that is sellable, and you look to TV and you go, well, they greenlit that, maybe I'll write something like that. Don't do that. That's how I wasted a lot of years trying to fit myself into a position that wasn't natural to who I wanted to be and what my talents were. I always like to consider, writing, especially pilots, as a bat signal to other people who think and talk like you. And just trust that you will find them. You just will. The current, or I should say that the pilot that got me a lot of jobs last year was a pilot that is, by all considerations, unmakeable. Not unreadable, but unmakeable, and something that I feel a lot of people in positions of power would probably discourage me from writing. But I did, and it's been a bat signal to find other people who think and talk like me. So just trust that you have that in you, and it'll come. And find other people that want to write as well. Form writing groups. Meet every couple of weeks, because every week is too crazy. You'll burn out. Meet every couple of weeks. Just keep going at it. I always say that every time that you open up Final Draft or whatever software you choose, you become a better writer, even if it is a script that if you you turn to your beloved and go, if I die, burn this. Like you, even when you do that, you become a better writer. Because I feel like, say you write a script that is just a great idea, but a bad execution, and you get down on yourself and you go, oh, like I'm such a shitty writer. You're not a shitty writer. You just wrote a bad take of a great idea, And that is one less door that you have to open in your brain creatively. So you should be celebrating the fact that you don't have that door to even consider. You just get closer and closer to it every time. Read a lot, try to find pilots online, see how other people write action and exposition and set up scenes. Read, watch. Don't try to emulate your heroes, but just try to, write something that makes you excited. And even if you're not excited as you're writing it, finish it, because your feelings may change. So that's my
beautiful. That's really beautiful advice. Yeah, thank you.
Writing advice.
We're gonna give you a chance. We're gonna plug all of the cool stuff you've got going on. Let people know where they can find you. I have one more question for you, but first, Richie, I'm gonna give you an opportunity. Is there anything else, Treehouse 410, Treehouse 431, or anything today that you wanted to add on to the conversation?
Yeah, would you like to come back when we get to Treehouse of Horror 31 in like 8 years?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah, doors open between now and then too. But we are absolutely going to have you back when we cover your episode.
No, thank you so much for all your insight. I definitely, a lot of what you talked about early on, which I got a sense of, and you just touched on, was the fear of you're never good enough and overcoming that and just putting yourself out there. I think is a very, very important lesson. It's stuff that, like, I know I still struggle with to this day, and most people do. So it's really inspirational. I know, Miles can touch on it a bit too. So it's really inspirational to know that you can just put yourself out there.
Yeah, well, another way to look at it that is true is that nobody knows. Like, people that are in positions of power, the only thing that they have over you is that maybe they have longer experience in that role, or, longer man hours that they've spent, reading script or writing or whatever. That's the only distinction. Otherwise, nobody knows. I think if anything, this pandemic has taught us is that, life is so fragile, and the world that we live in, the culture and society that we live in, is not a simulation, because that makes me sound like some angsty teen poet, but
on to us, unplug.
But the things that we have placed importance on, that we feel matter, or the people that we appoint as the gatekeepers, and the people that we kind of wait for validation, sure, they matter-ish, but they don't really. So in a sense, essentially, it's all in your head. If you think that you're not good enough, you are good. If you want to do it, you are good. There's a reason why you're drawn to it, but it shouldn't be, your success isn't, really resting on those other benchmarks of success that you maybe previously would have ascribed to. It's more about okay, do I feel great about the output I'm doing? Great. Have I found other people that I make laugh? Great. I think celebrating that versus, oh no, I didn't get into, this script contest, or I didn't, get this job, that can hurt, but doesn't really matter in the end. So,
I am
also
literally
Netflix
on
will buy any script.
What?
Say again?
That, and also Netflix will buy any script at the end of the day.
No, they won't. I can tell you. No, they will not.
He's fact checking that South Park episode live right now.
Open a wound.
Jay, I was going to say, I am literally on my way to a writers group right after we get done here, and I feel super inspired by your words. So thank you so much for all of that. Thank you for being here. I did say I have one more question. I'm not sure if it's going to, cross the NDA line. So if you have to answer with a facial expression or a noise or a sound effect, all of those are fine. But Simpsons, will you be writing more in the future for The Simpsons? Oh, she's hiding behind the phone if you are listening to the audio version of that. So we'll just keep our fingers crossed for you and hope that we see Julia Gulia pop up on more episodes in the future.
I've changed my legal name to that.
I feel like if I got spooky credits, I would. I mean,
yeah,
my middle name's not that great anyway, so I would be fine with it. But
I'll be pulled over by a cop, and I'll have him say that to me.
Yeah, and they'll just be like, "Toy Gory, I know you."
Actually, really quick, that reminds me of my friend Nico in college. He had a license plate, a novelty plate that said Frico, because his name was Nico. He got pulled over once by a cop, and the cop walked up to his window and he goes, So you think you're a freako. And it's like one of the best cop moments I can think of.
And you knew about police brutality. Dark.
This is when police weren't that bad.
But seriously, Julia, this has been an absolute blast. I have to thank Rosie Kruth again for introducing us. She said such good things about your class and about you as a person, and you've lived up to all of the great things she said. This was a fantastic time, and I thank you for being here.
Yeah.
You've got your website, you've got Twitter. Tell everybody all the places you'd like them to come and find your work.
Yeah. You can find a smattering of stuff that I've done and I do at juliaprescott.com. I need to update it, but I've started writing a newsletter because I need more things to fucking put on my plate, but it's called the JP Pick. It is a collection. It comes out every Monday, and it basically is like, 5-ish things that I've been enjoying. I started it in quarantine, so specifically in quarantine, TV shows, podcasts, movies that I've watched, articles that I've read, etc. So if you want to hear things that I'm digging, you can go to juliaprescott.substack.com to subscribe. If you want to be on the newsletter email list for JP Lecture Series when it comes back, jplectureseries@gmail.com, right there. You can get on there. I'm at Julia Prescott on all social media, Twitter and Instagram particularly. I don't really engage with Facebook anymore, as you might imagine. Why?
I can't figure out why that would be.
Right. But I'm on there.
You want to plug your Parler? Oh, wait, sorry.
The other day, and I'm upset. I don't like it. So not on that. But yeah, if you just want to see little bursts of positivity on Twitter, that's where you can find me. And on Instagram, seeing photos of my cats and my husband, and the occasional funny sign I see walking around. That's basically my social media presence. So yeah, and listen to Round Springfield if you want to hear me and Allie Gerst talk to people who have worked on The Simpsons about things that they have done that are not The Simpsons, because each and every one of them have lived a life and all of their stories are interesting. We've had people like Yardley Smith on. As I mentioned, Al Jean has been on. Scully was on the previous iteration of our podcast, Everything's Coming Up Simpsons. But you can find all episodes at Maximum Fun at MaximumFun.org. That's it, I think. I don't know.
That's a lot. That's awesome. Again, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Richie, you want to do the super quick version of our plugs?
Our plug is super quick. You can follow Miles over that way, I think, if my arm is right. Yeah, that way, at Mr. Most Days Off on all social media. I'm at @thewiz_kid23. Most importantly, you can follow our show. That's at Best Darn Diddly. That's DIDDLY. And Miles, it wasn't a title in the Treehouse of Hoarder, but I felt like it needed the extra I emphasized in the title so that our spelling is correct, in fact.
Yeah, we get a lot of that. It's a debate back and forth. But I'm not sure what we're talking about next week. We'll be back, Richie and I, to do a Best Darn Everything about something other than The Simpsons that we love. But the next episode of The Simpsons we'll be covering is E-I-E-I-DO. And we will have the return of the streak. Dr. Andrew Briseno will be coming back again. And he's bringing a friend who's a grad student of his who's currently doing a project related to The Simpsons. Super excited to hear more about that from him. So that'll be coming up in a couple weeks when we get back on track with The Simpsons.
Whoa. Student doing work on The Simpsons.
I know, right?
What a wild ride. Again, college is fake. It just shows.
We tell him that every time he's on the show.
Not real. Cool.
We'll see Julia's sister on this episode here 5 minutes after we log off.
Yeah. There we go. She'll choose her own adventure of how Julia podcasts for future. I don't know. I don't know. I lost track there. But it's fun. Thank you again, Julia. And of course, thank everybody else out there for listening. And until next time, be cromulent to each other.